Welcome to the Inspired Riding Podcast. I'm your host, Beth Lauren Parrish. As a certified riding instructor, remote coach, and rapid transformational therapy practitioner, a powerful form of hypnotherapy, I'm here to remind you to slow down, trust your intuition, and really deeply listen to your horse. And this will make for the best co-creative dances possible, whether you're on the ground or connecting on their backs. Thank you so much for being here, and here we go. Hello there, Inspired Riders. I'm so pleased to share with you this podcast where I interviewed Katie Boniface, continuing along with the Instructor interview series. Katie Boniface, a passionate horsewoman based in Queensland, Australia, has over 30 years of riding experience and 18 years as an instructor. Katie brings a wealth of knowledge and heart to her work. After a successful run in dressage, show jumping, and eventing at the state level, she shifted her focus from competition to connection. Through her riding school, Equestrian Spirit, Katie helps riders build deeper, more meaningful partnerships with their horses, grounded in trust, biomechanics, and mutual respect. Her mission is to guide riders in seeing their horses as equals and companions on a journey of growth and self-discovery. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and here we go. Hello there, Inspired Riders. We are continuing with the Riding Instructor interview series, and today I am so pleased to introduce you to Katie Boniface. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Katie. I'm in Australia over here. I'm a horse riding coach. I've been coaching for 20 years now, riding for 32. Also a naturopath and Buteyko breathing practitioner. And we just purchased our school 2 years ago. After 20 years of trying to decide whether this is right for me or not, we just keep sinking ourselves deeper and deeper, and now we have our own riding school.
That's so exciting. I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because it's where I learnt to ride, learnt to teach as well. So I started in the industry at this place in Logan Village, and I worked there for 10 years, loved it, but classic like horse rider coach burnout, like working 12-hour days, not getting paid for all the hours, working in the rain and the mud and the grace, and you're just like, you know what, I could also not be doing this. And I went out on my own and just was teaching people on their own properties with their own horses. It was so nice not to do 6 hours of feeding a day on top of everything else. And but I missed it so much. I missed the community of a riding school environment. And I'd watch them go out to competitions and that kind of thing and do all of like their internal stuff together. Like, oh, I miss, like it just felt so much more lonely, and I get the little green jellies and be jealous that I wasn't involved in everything anymore. And then the previous owner got really sick, and so I stepped in when my son was 10 months old just to like cover her butt a little bit until she got better, and just kept sinking in deeper until we recognized that she couldn't continue. She couldn't like stand up to teach and that kind of thing. So we ended up, trying to put a bunch of work into the grounds to get them going again, clean it all up, and then we ended up buying it and flogging ourselves to keep going, right? Like gutting the house so that we have a nice new renovated house, and the grounds are all overgrown with weeds, so we've reclaimed that, and gate doesn't open properly, so like ringing in favors with my welder friends and trying to get the resources together to resurface the arena, all the joys that come with trying to like run a big proper school.
That's amazing. What a huge endeavor. But I'm so glad you followed your heart, because when the jealousy comes in, that's like a signal to yourself like, oh, maybe this is really what I need to do, right?
Yeah, I can't escape. I keep telling people, like, there's been a good 4 or 5 clients that I've had where I've like, all right, if, I've really felt committed to them, but if they decide to stop riding, I'm done. I'm not a coach anymore. And that's why I have those other degrees in naturopathy and buteyko breathing. I worked at a health food store for ages, and I've tried to, do other things just to, because it is so labor intensive. And then obviously, trying to keep horses going in your program and that kind of thing is always a challenge. So try to do other things. That's why I've got the naturopathy and the buteyko breathing, but I just keep getting suckered on in.
That's really awesome. I'm glad that you kept following your heart. So I want to go back to the breathing in a moment, but first I want to ask you, what lights you up about teaching? What do you love most about it?
I love what the horses offer. We have such a beautiful herd, and it's one of those things that when I was initially working for somebody else, and you'd see, the toll that it takes on the horses and their body and their mind, and emotionally taxing and that kind of thing. And when I came back into it, I thought, I don't want to do this if it's not going to benefit the horse in some way. And so I really restructured the program where everybody has to do groundwork. It's not purely written. And so all of our groups are half hour of groundwork and an hour of written. And we really focus on working the horses for soundness more so than people are just coming in and getting to have a ride on the horses and learning how to jump and do dressage and that kind of thing. I really encourage them to learn how to use their body effectively so that it doesn't create as much wear and tear on the horses and whatnot. And as a result, these horses are gorgeous. They call out to me when they see me, and they come into the barn every day. They don't hightail it to the other end of the paddock. It's obviously we can talk about anthropomorphization and that kind of thing, but they seem to really enjoy their job. We introduce it with games in their groundwork. So at the moment they're learning to paint. We do soccer. We put the Halloween decorations out at Halloween and do our confidence and curiosity training where the girls all act up and the horses. And you know what the scariest thing for the horses is? The bubble machine. It's nothing else.
Oh my gosh, my pony did not like the bubble machine either. That's so funny that you said that.
Yeah, the bubbles are so scary. They move and they pop and they touch them. So we really try to keep it fun, and as a result, the horses are just a gift that keep on giving, and they really nurture the riders along, and it really has created such a lovely community of empathetic riders that enjoy learning about horses and their nature, and are just so blown away by them all the time, instead of, we can get caught up in those personal achievement goals of going faster, jumping higher. And so I've been really lucky to build a community of people that care about horses, which is really nice.
And it's so refreshing, and that's exactly what I would like to create when I get my bigger facility. I mean, I had it in my old place, of course, but I love that you are developing empathy and really emphasizing what works best for the horse first. That's just what people need to learn, and that's so important.
And I think it's such a gap in the riding school environment because, obviously the expenses are really high, and there is such a proportion of riders that, most of your initial inquiries are, you have horses, I don't have horses, I want to ride your horses. And it's cool, all right, you actually have to be nice to them. I need to keep them sound, and if you don't like those values, you can go ride somewhere else. And that's hard to do initially, right? It's you need the students, the inquiries, the numbers, the income, you need that coming in to keep the horses fed and to keep it going, and to, be able to pay yourself so that you can eat as well and not just burn out yourself. And so I think, I was pretty lucky in the first couple of years where my expenses weren't too big because I was kind of stepping in to relieve somebody else. But then, so I was able to kind of start small and grow because her client base had really shrunk. And yeah, we're in a really nice space. So it's taken about 4 years to get in a really nice space where, we're full we have inquiries coming through like a couple of times a week, so we can fill spots easily, and we can consider like expanding the herd and growing and that kind of thing, and know that we're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot doing it.
That's so important. And it's so good to create those clear boundaries, because then the right people will show up for you.
So much so. Like, we have such lovely, lovely people. And even they say that, like, they come in and they say, oh, you know, you've got such lovely people that come here and ride here and so friendly, and they chat and all that kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, I've worked really hard to create that. And, you know, people that don't have that empathy for the horses, they don't stay. But it also, you know, it translates through to the community and how everybody connects in the barn and how everybody helps out and that kind of thing. Like, there's no contribution like that goes unmatched. It's a really nice irony, like reciprocity within the community, because we've upheld the values that we have of how you should engage with horses. People who don't value that don't stay, and as a result we have people that come through into the community of it and have the same values, which is really, really lovely as well.
That's beautiful. I love that so much. Okay, so now talk to me about the breathing techniques you use and help people with.
So Buteyko breathing is a specific type of breathing which is the opposite of most breathwork trainings, and it's about the breath holding. It is the one that has got the science backing behind it that actually is there to improve lung function. So it's more designed around the physiology of improving the quality of your lungs, having a positive impact on sleep apnea, asthma, like any of those lung conditions. But I primarily did it because I wanted to do breath work with the horses. And so it's been really fun to see how, you know, even though it's specifically for the physiological health, how it still impacts the nervous system and how your nervous system communicates with the horse, and how we have capacity to regulate our nervous system through breath and to find that internal connection to self and peace so that we can connect better with the horses. So it's all been a very fun experiment, because it wasn't within the training. I was like, oh, well, I'll just see how this plays out then. And the funny thing about breath work is that it does connect you to your nervous system. And so if you're not aware of it, it can bring things up for you. So if you have like PTSD or anything, anxiety, anything like that, it does bring it to the surface. So you really need to work with a practitioner at the same time, like a counselor that can help you process those things. But in the beginning, it's a lot about these breath holding techniques. So it expands your lungs, engages your diaphragm, and helps you breathe better, basically breathe deeper. And so it can kind of trigger a bit of a flight mechanism in your body. And so I was just like sitting out with the herd and practicing it just to see what would happen. And when I go into the breath holding, it like activates the nervous system into a little bit of those flight pathways. And the horses saw it, and they were all like out grazing and just like relaxed and fine. And then they came over and they stood like around me in like a really protective little circle. I was like, interesting. And then I went back into like the normal breathing, where it was like, it's better because you then breathe deeper so you can get into a better state of relaxation. And then they all dispersed. They went back to grazing. I was like, that's interesting, isn't it? And so it's been really fun to play with in my body personally, because, you know, it's helped me push further with running and that kind of thing, because it makes me breathe better when I'm running. But it's also made me more aware of when I'm holding tension in my body and I'm not using my diaphragm. And so I can do a reset better. But I've started connecting it to our groundwork exercises. So I can count the Buteyko breathing with the matching steps within the horses. And, you know, the old adage of the body keeps the score.
Right.
Like, yeah. So it's like if you have something that happens, even if you're like not particularly aware of like it storing in your body, you know, your body can hold on to it as a memory to protect you in the future. Those kinds of things can be really hard to let go of, and it can create a belief in yourself that's really hard to move forward from. One of the ones for me personally was about being proud of my work. So just as a side tangent, when I was in high school, I come from a really small town, but my mum is really competitive. She was supposed to go to the Olympics for hockey, but it was the year they boycott with the Cold War. So she's very competitive. And I am not a runner, so I did not thrive in netball, hockey. I was like the kid in hockey that watched the ball roll past me and wouldn't chase it. And it seemed to be that horse riding was my thing. And so she was very competitive with that. And so I was the only one in this small community that got 2 lessons a week. She spent all the money on all the nice gear and the float and the saddles and all that kind of thing. So, you know, we'd go out and compete and I'd clean up just because of the, you know, the privilege that she was able to offer me to make me like be able to present better. And so I'd go to school, and you know what it's like to do a hack show. You like go into 10 events, you get a ribbon for everything. So I'm like, oh, first and this, first and this, first and this. And it's rattling it off. My friend was like, oh, stop gloating and showboating. Like, nobody wants to hear about all of these wins. I'm like, you literally just asked me. And so it was like at that time, I was like, okay, I need to keep this to myself. I can't share my success with others because they don't take it well. And so from that time forward, I stopped feeling proud of my achievements and what I'd done and stopped sharing it. And fast forward, you know, 10, 15 years, and you have to promote yourself in a business, and that did not bode well for me. So it's like scared to put myself out there, scared to hear, you know, people tell me that, you know, whatever negativity might come up with regards to that. And so it was one of those really beautiful moments where I was able to reframe that. And they can be so challenging, those moments of reframe, right? Like they hit hard in the chest. And so being able to do the breath work and matching steps with the horses, I think there's something beautiful about it because, you know, they do offer that space of co-regulation. So when you're trying to just do it by yourself in your self-regulation, you can't always catch it. You can just spiral. I imagine the hypnotherapy would have the same impact where, you know, it's not something you can always internalize yourself. You need support through it. But doing the breath work with the horses, and the horses offer that space of co-regulation, it helps you like just catch and ground it a little bit more and then draw attention to it so that you can shift, oh, that's the belief that I have. Well, that doesn't really make any sense and it doesn't serve me anymore. So what can I replace it with? And then you just have to keep practicing that for a little bit to make sure the wiring sticks, and that's where your brain goes. And so yeah, that's not actually what Buteyko breathing is. It's just a tool that I've used to like connect the two together and to help with a process that I think as horse riders we all already enjoy doing. Is it's such a transformational journey for us. So it's just an extra tool in the toolkit.
That's absolutely gorgeous. And thank you for sharing that story. It is very similar to the process of the hypnotherapy sessions that I do. Is we get you comfortable, you're breathing, you're getting into that relaxed state, and then you're asking the subconscious to highlight what you need in order to understand what your blocks are. And it's so interesting because I had a very similar thing happen when I was a child. I was in a family where it was just normal to kind of like, you know, talk about your accomplishments. So I would talk about my riding lessons or a little competition I'd be in. And next thing you know, all of my friends turned on me and I got bullied. So I then internalized and didn't want to brag about a thing. I didn't want to say anything. So it took a really big deal for me to flip that. And now, of course, you know, I talk about my business and my books and all the things I do. And so I love that you're able to incorporate the breath work with sorting through this reframing. And what it is you're highlighting what it is that you need to work on. You're interrupting with that breath work the issue and really putting light on it, and then you're reframing it. So that's absolutely gorgeous. I'm so glad you went through that process and sorted it out. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so good. Love it.
Yeah. So cool. And I'm wondering also, because horses get us into that gorgeous state of feeling safe, feeling in that meditative and reflective state because of their energy. Like if I'm feeling sick in any way, I go out and just start grooming or hand scratching my pony, and next thing you know, I forgot that I was even feeling sick. Like they're so good at that. Their energy field is so strong and so beautiful. So I really feel like, just inviting the feeling of being with the horse, even when you're not with them. Like even if you just grab a brush and sniff their hair, I think that can help throughout the day get you back
100%.
to that state.
And I get that just with teaching as well. It's like if I'm, having a spiral mentally or stressed or whatever, you would think it's the opposite, but I just let it all go when I teach. And so I'm like, it's fine. I'm going out and I'm teaching this afternoon. I'll be fine in 4 hours. I'll see you on the other side and I'll be back to normal and I won't be so cranky.
Exactly. They have such healing about them just by being themselves, and they're inviting us to be ourselves and be our authentic selves. And that's the most gorgeous thing.
Yeah.
So, Katie, can you tell me any favorite teaching tips that you'd like to share with other instructors?
I really think that incorporating groundwork has made such a significant impact on the work that we do in the school. When you're in the saddle, it can create a disconnectedness that we're unaware of because we don't get to see the horse's body language. We don't get to see their facial expressions. We don't get to notice the nuances of how they're interpreting our communication. We're only developing our feel, and then also as coaches on the ground, we can misinterpret what the people are feeling, because what we feel as an individual is not always how somebody else feels it. And so then we can unintentionally create a mismatch in language and miscommunication between the horse and rider because we've put our own experience of what we think we would feel if we were in the saddle on somebody else who's feeling something else and interpreting that as what we're trying to communicate. So I think the groundwork is such a vital tool. It has absolutely escalated and accelerated all of my students with regards to their connected riding. So it's not just the mechanical riding of a bike, like pedal the pedals, steer the head, put the brakes on. They are really in communication with the horse when they're riding, and I put that down to the groundwork that we do. The riders that I get come from other schools now, they really struggle with our ponies now because they're so used to that mechanical aspect of legs mean go, reins mean stop, pull the head means turn. And even if you get them going to a certain point of developing aids from the legs, you're still just pushing the buttons. You're not getting the back and forth conversation where the rider asks something, the horse receives the ask and replies, and then the rider can decide how they want to respond, and we have that back and forth versus I've asked you to do something, yes, now you must do it. So and then just by any means of coercion and submission, we must push through and make the horse do it. As a result, the horses are so much more willing, and so they're but also they care for the riders a lot more as well, which is another thing that frustrates some of my riders sometimes, is that one of the things that we have instilled in our horses is that they are free to choose stop and relax if they don't know the answer, if they feel unbalanced, if there's anything about what's being asked of them that feels unsafe to them, they're allowed to choose stop with relaxation. And so that takes a lot of the hairy bolts out of the training sessions, is that that tension is building and it's at that tipping over point, and then the horse uses the whip because the tension is there. The horse is saying no, we're blowing through it. They lose their balance, and then they're saying we're going over this jump anyway, and then the horse launches, freaks out, bolts the other side, dumps the rider. Take all of that out of the equation when you give the horse permission to say, this doesn't feel good right now. And so that is great for me because I can say, hey, like, there's something going on. And it's not always what I can see. Like, I can't always see it because I'm not the one carrying the rider. Like, I can see things quite well. I've been doing it for 20 years. But the horses are the ones carrying the rider. And if I'm like, you know what, I think this rider might be ready to canter. I think this rider might be ready for me to put the jump up. They're looking good. And then the horse, I do that and the horse, air quotes, refuses. Mm-hmm. I don't go, oh, my horse is being naughty. It's not doing what you've asked it to do. I go, our horses are really good at looking after you. They know when you are ready. They know when you need to work on something a little bit more. And as a result, your horse is not wanting to canter. Let's do some more sit trot work. Let's make this seat a little bit better. Let's see if you can be a bit more balanced and with them so they feel more comfortable about offering that canter transition. And so as a result, they are also aware for themselves not to push through a no with their horse when they're ready to go and get their own horse. Because I think that's another big challenge is like, we set all these riders up with horses that we micromanage and make sure they're performing perfectly. And if they're not, we pull them from a school and put them on a different horse. And then they go and get their own horse and they don't know how to solve any problems because they've just learned how to push the buttons. And so being able to help our students see the tension building, notice it as the horse does not necessarily feel good. Why? Is there a breakdown in communication? Am I not being balanced enough? Do I need to be clearer on my aids? Do I need to warm up more? Is another one. Yeah. Being able to have that problem solving in their toolkit just means that the horses are so much more willing and eager to participate. And I really feel that has started with the introduction of the groundwork because I didn't have that before when we weren't doing groundwork. It's come from, even just introducing clicker training and the horse is mugging you for treats. Well, you need to start saying, hey, don't mug me. And then, you start stretching behaviors when you're doing your games. And the horse starts to show frustrated behaviors because what they were getting the treats for, they're now not. Well, what's going to happen in your riding when you're saying, okay, one lap of the arena in canter is good, and now I want 2 laps of the arena. You're going to get those frustrated behaviors because what we set as good enough, we're stretching when we're trying to improve ourselves and condition our horses. The most vital skill that our horses need is emotional agility and self-regulation. And when I was doing breaking and training, I'd be like, oh, it's fine. Like, you just got to sit on the rubbish for, maybe first couple of months, maybe 6 months, and then the horse will settle into it and they'll be fine. Well, now I know that what that rubbish is like, horse needs to learn emotional agility. They need to learn how to self-regulate. We need to learn how to communicate. They need to actually understand their aids. We can't just hop on and ride and the horse knows what to do. There's a whole process that leads up to having a confident horse that understands how to answer correctly and, carry us with confidence, not lose their balance and be able to do all the things that we're asking it to do. And then also be willing participants to actually look after riders that don't know how to ride. Like, that's the most taxing job, is starting the beginners. And so building this level of nurture and care into a horse that has a challenging job, like, that's really hard, Yes. They're so good that they're just like, okay, when you're not quite ready for that, we're just going to chill. Like, oh, thank you for looking after my riders. And then I encourage the riders to do the same. Every time we finish, we end on big pat, say, thanks for looking after me, and hop off for that.
Beautiful. Oh, I love it so much. I wish every child, every adult, all the riders could learn this way. So yeah, it's all about just understanding. It's a communication, it's invitations, it's not demands. This is just gorgeous, Katie. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, which, it does have its own challenges because you have parents come in and they have the pressure for performance, and they expect to see their, kids progressing and that kind of thing. So we've just mitigated that a little bit with giving them realistic timeframes. It's like, our kids stay on the lunge for 6 months, which is longer than any other riding school locally. But I don't want to sacrifice my horse's back to rush them into a group because the rider's unbalanced and hitting heavy. And I don't want to sacrifice the softness of the horse's mouth because the kids are balancing on the reins and getting a tight, strong neck against their hands.
Good
because
for
they're
you.
lacking
That's so
balance
good.
and coordination within their body. And so if I tell the parents, look, we've got 6 months on the lunge, 6 months off the lunge before we look at going into a group, this is going to consolidate your child's legs so they have nice, strong core balance. They're moving independently of the horse. That's also going to make my horses stay sound so that I don't have to keep replacing them. And then, maybe in that 1 to 2 year mark, that's when we can start seeing like a lot more independent riding and steering and control and that kind of thing. And then the parents are happy. It's more so because, when you think about like coordination takes 1,000 repetitions or 6 to 8 weeks to get that wiring happening. That means you don't see progress for 2 months. And then if you think about it, takes like 3 to 4 months for, the muscles to start building and 6 to 12 months for it to just be like an internal thing that they can then do. It means that we're doing the same thing for like 4 months and you're not really seeing any progress. And then all of a sudden they are just off and they're solo. And they're like, oh my God, they've like improved so much this term. Like, yeah, because now they can we spent the time nailing that coordination, getting the strength for them to be able to do it. Now they can go do it. Instead of like just trying to rush through all of that coordination, now their legs are flying all over the place. They're hitting the saddle with their seat heavy. Their hands are going up and...
Oh, you cut out again. But yeah, I totally understand. I'm so glad that you set up the parents' expectations. That's huge and so smart. Yes.
I think it's something, a lot of horse people are horse people because they don't like people. But I actually really like people as well.
Yes.
And I like working with the parents. And I think a lot of coaches maybe get scared of the parents because they don't want the judgment. They don't want to be critiqued. They don't want to be told what to do and that kind of thing. But I really like working with the parents because the parents know how to work with the children. And so I can say, hey, I'm having this challenge with your child. How would you like me to address it? Or I can say, we have a lot of neurodiverse kids that come in and I tend to find their muscles take a bit longer to develop. And so I say, hey, the muscles of neurodiverse kids take a little bit longer to develop. This is probably going to take an extra couple months on what we would air quotes class as normal.
Do you have them?
And they're generally happy about that.
Yeah, that's so good. Do you also recommend exercises at home for them to do?
Oh, 100%. Doesn't mean they're going to do it.
Okay, yeah. This is true.
I have one of the kids that started in one of our programs and she really wanted to be trotting off lead. I was like, cool, you need to do squats because we need to build the strength up in your legs. And she's like, I hate squats. I'm like, cool. And so then she'd come in and I'd set her, 100 squats a week, you can break that down. It's just 15 every couple of days. We can make it work, 25. And she'd come in and I'd be like, how'd your squats go? And she's like, yeah, I did 100 today and my legs are dying. I'm like, well, that's not helpful because now you're in your riding lesson and your legs are too tired.
Oh, no.
So yeah, I do try to, but compliance, right? As a naturopath, that's one of the things that I really struggle with is the compliance of, sticking to the treatment plan. So
yes.
I'm no good at being a PT or anything like that.
I understand that. I was actually just having this discussion. We have a little accountability group chat with some of my friends to help keep us going in our middle age, exercising and cheer each other on. And one gal said, I hate squats. I'm like, I don't like them either. But you know what I did? I reframe it. I pretend I'm going over a jump with a horse. And that just made more sense to me. So
I really found a love for exercise because, same thing as horse riders, we fall off a lot. So I've got a lot of injuries and I found it just holds my body together a lot better when I do squats and, those supportive exercises. But yeah, getting kids enthusiastic is a whole other thing.
Totally, I get that. Yeah, for us, for me at least, it's non-negotiable. I have to keep going with the injuries I've had, and but I'm grateful because I love getting stronger, and then I feel it immediately. Like if a spook happens, it like doesn't even faze me anymore. Just like come right back like the Matrix. It's so fun. Do you have a story about a favorite lesson horse that you want to share?
I think my favorite lesson has actually come from my personal horse. And he has helped instill that into all of my lesson horses. My second horse that I really had a disconnect with. I'd come out of like that riding school environment and I was push buttoning him. I'd fall off him every time I rode and I was scared of him. We got like a certain ways with him and we did okay. I went out to like a bunch of different stockmen trying to teach me how to ride him so that I could sit his buck or just like train the buck out of him. And then my mum ended up getting me a stock saddle. So then when he bucked, I didn't fall off. And so I learned how to sit a buck. But then my third horse after that, he was an absolute nightmare of a horse. Like he's a parent's worst nightmare. Couldn't catch him, couldn't touch his ears, couldn't touch his mouth, so he couldn't put a halter on, couldn't touch his mouth to put the bridle on. He was sold to us for a lot of money as a show horse for me to go out and compete on, ready to go. Couldn't tie him up. He'd rear up, pull back, run away. My farrier hated him, couldn't get him on a float. Absolute nightmare. I was riding him for about a year and we finally got to a point that I could get out to competitions on him. He didn't even have an established canter. And he was sold to us as like a show horse that was ready to go out and compete. And the first show we went to, somebody recognized him off the rodeo circuit. So he'd been bucked out as a bronc. Yeah.
Oh no.
Maybe had like 3 to 6 months of training, flipped and sold as a child's show horse.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Some
so
humans, you know.
Absolutely feral and I loved him. But it was my first real experience and I didn't know what I was experiencing at the time, but I can see it now, is he was a horse that had trauma and PTSD.
Sure.
And so it didn't matter how safe and loved he was and that I never laid a hand on him. I never did anything cruel to him. He never fully let go and trusted people again. But he was also the first horse that I had hook onto me and follow me everywhere I went. So because I couldn't tie him up, I'd just like fake tie him and hope he stuck. And I was 13 at the time, so I also didn't have like a lot of tools in my toolkit. And he would follow me back to the tack room to put his boots away, back to the tie-up rail to get his saddle, back to the tack room. He'd hook on and he'd follow me everywhere. I also had to learn, the basic theory of like hooking on, join up, connection training without, chasing him around the round yard because it's the only way I could catch him. So I had to like really quietly, like breathing very deeply, approaching him on the exact right angle. If he put his head slightly up, I'd have to stop. And then when he lowered his head again, I could approach. So he taught me how to be sensitive to the horse's level of tension. Otherwise, I'd spend 3 hours trying to catch him.
That's an incredible lesson at 13 years old.
Yeah, it was very helpful. But I didn't know what I was learning at the time. It was just my horse, and this is how I dealt with him. I took my boyfriend out one day to meet him, and I took a muesli bar because I was like, I'm never going to be able to catch him with this nail here. And I thought maybe with a bit of food I could entice him, but I'd never fed him a muesli bar before. And he was like, no, suspect straight away. You bought a male, and what the hell is this food? And I spent like half an hour trying to catch him. I was like, fine, you're not meeting him today. And he was like that through. I had him until he died, and he was like that right until the end. And as an old man, he would have to be standing under his tree, and I'd have to approach him on the exact right angle to his shoulder, and I'd have to stop if his head came up and walk when his head came down and not walk with too much intention, and he would allow me to approach him. And so, I went from him into this riding school environment where I was riding other people's horses. The owner of the school, I was training and competing her horses, and I really went down that route of performance training, getting up to states and nationals and trying to train to be a coach and all of that kind of thing. So I got very disconnected and robotic to a certain degree. But the boss that was here, she was very good, my mentor. She's like, don't forget it's still a horse. Like, it's a privilege that they allow you on their back.
Yes.
And so it was that and my horse King that kept reminding me that there's something more to this, and I've got to make sure that I keep hold of that and keep pursuing that. I was in the middle of one of my lessons with my coach educator, working on signing me off to get my next level of coaching qualifications, and it was an awful lesson because I'd learned how to sit a buck and how to ride the horses through behaviors. My coaches were never scared of me really hounding the horses with the whips and the spurs and the double bridle and that kind of thing. And I just hated it in my soul. But I thought that's what I needed to do to progress in the industry, because that's, I was 22 at this time. I was not ready to start questioning the authorities in the industry, and I was just doing as I was told. But I just broke down and started crying, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. I was ready to quit altogether. I can't ride like this. And she fired me as a student and called me unteachable. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it without you then. And so I really have held, with me these lessons that King taught me of connection without really understanding what they were and how to achieve them and what I'm looking at. Realizing that people didn't know how to approach horses, they didn't understand their timing, they didn't know what they were looking at. I didn't know I was looking at activation of the nervous system. I was just like, see this when this happens, it means this, when this happens, it means that. And just trying to find my way through. And now, I get to teach other people to see that and not just be pushing buttons on a horse for their own, to light themselves up and make their own achievements happen, but to try and create teamwork between and connectedness between both of them. Because I think that's what, if that's not what we want, we would go ride motorbikes and bikes. Yeah. And I have had people quit horses to ride motorbikes because they're easier. And I think as horse riders, we're not there to push the buttons. We're there to connect and have that, rapport and that beautiful moment when you can feel like your body is moving with the horse's body and you're doing it together and you're enjoying each other's company. It's what lights me up. So sharing that with others is also what lights me up.
I love that. What a gorgeous transformation, and good for you for just finally drawing the line in the sand and saying, I'm done, and then going off and doing what lights up for you. That's so important, and I'm really grateful that you're doing this out in the world.
Yeah, it's been really good. I know that if I hadn't gone down this route, I'd be your typical very angry older coach that would be chasing, horses and kids with whips and trying to force them into things. And I had so many of those lessons as a kid where, I was scared of jumping. My horse didn't like jumping, and I'd have my coach chase me into the fence with the lunge whip and chase us over the fence. It doesn't need to be that way.
No. Yeah, I'm so glad that you shifted from that and found your way, and now you're teaching such a beautiful way. It's so good.
Yeah.
So if you could teach a master class to other instructors, what would it be about, and what would be some of the key topics?
I do really like our lesson of the Buteyko breathing with the matching steps. I find it's foundational. I had a new student yesterday and very good rider. I was like, actually, you're up there as far as riders go. But she didn't know how to synchronize with the horse. She knew how to ride. She didn't know how to ride rhythm. And when we go into our training scale, rhythm is foundational. So just that foundation lesson of imagining that your butt cheeks are feet, making your butt feet walk with the horse. So you're not like grinding your pelvis along the saddle and chasing the horse forward with your seat, but you're actually moving with it. Feeling the horse's breath, that you're integrating in their breath and their movement, because they have to carry us. We're sitting on their lungs, we're restricting their breath. As soon as your seat goes heavy, you're driving the air out of their lungs. And then we wonder why we can't get them to relax and swing over their back. Being able to feel the barrel swing allows you to actually get the timing of your legs. That's the biggest thing, is like, how many people are like, I can't feel my horse's back legs. Well, if you move in rhythm with your horse, then the application of your legs actually affects the movement of those hind legs. So if you can get your little feet seat working, you can get your legs swinging with the horse's barrel, then when your leg naturally is inclined to swing on is when you're influencing the hind leg movement, and now we have timing. And if we could all just like learn that at the beginning, can you imagine how much quicker we could progress if we actually knew the timing of how to influence the horse's movement so that it makes them more balanced instead of less balanced? But then also, I would like to fix everybody's legs as riders, because I really feel like they don't get that foundational start of finding how to balance over their lower leg. And then that impacts everything that we do as a rider, and how well the horse can balance with us and balance us. Because if we can't find our balance and our center over our lower leg, now we can't refine what our hands are doing for contact, so our horse can't relax into contact, seek our hands for communication. We're not going to get relaxation and swing. Therefore, we can't get a half halt without hollowing the horse. Now we're not going to have impulsion. We're never going to get to collection. You want to jump, you're always going to have a flat horse running through fences. You want to do dressage, you're going to have a hollow horse that's working behind the contact, faking it. So, it all starts with all of the shit exercises that nobody wants to do.
Yeah, but that's why you have them on the lunge line for so long, and I really commend you. I mean, I've done a lot of lunge lessons too, and I don't know if it really was 6 months, but it could be close to that for some riders. And I have this beautiful image of Sally Swift centered riding and the building blocks, and the biggest block is your lower leg, and if you take that away, all the blocks tumble down. So I love that you remind people of that. It's so important. Yeah.
And yeah, we don't put enough focus into it and work into it. And then finding the movement through the seat as well is so important.
Yes. Is there anything you'd like to add that I haven't asked you?
I think a lot of horse riding is not actually horse riding. A lot of horse riding is the work that we have to do to blow through our own barriers. Doing it for 20 years, and repeating the same thing over and over. And I'm like, surely I don't need to keep saying these things. And then I have, the next generation of kids coming through, and they haven't heard these things of like how to work through their mental blocks and that kind of thing. When they're struggling, just being able to stop and say, hey, like, you've worked so hard to get to this point. Like, think about where you were 6 months ago. You couldn't even trot. And now you're getting canter transitions. Like, that's amazing. And you need to, see that and be grateful for the journey that you're on. Because guess what? You're going to get this canter transition, and then you're not even going to care about it, and you're going to be saying, what's next? And then you're going to be frustrated about not getting the next thing. And we carry that all the way through to adults, because I have the same pep talk with the adults when they get frustrated that, they're on a particular learning plateau while they're building strength and condition and coordination, and their horse is doing the same. And just being able to stop and remind people that they have worked really hard to get where they're at. And even though it's not necessarily where they want to be, they've still done a really good job to get to where they are. And then seeing, all right, now, like, we've got to go again. And you're going to hit that. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that you'll get there. It's achievable. But you're going to get there, and you're not going to care that you're there anymore, because you're going to be, like, chasing that next shiny object. So being able to, like, really normalize that experience of we have to spend time building coordination, strength, muscle tone, because it is an athletic sport. As much as everybody like to tell us that it's the horse doing the work and not us, got a lot of work involved, and just the basic art of horse riding, of keeping the horse between you and the ground. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And so we were just like reminding people that it's okay to feel stuck and find it hard. We're in a strength training, coordination and conditioning process. And as soon as you and the horse are ready, we will be on to the next thing. And then you'll be chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and it never stops. I actually just had this conversation with my son because he's done his first day at school. He's in his first year at school, and he's finding the responsibilities a bit hard. So it's like he has to help pack his lunchbox. He has to get himself ready and brush his teeth and put his shoes on and pack his bag, and all of these things have really accumulated from where they were from where he was at kindy. And I was like, when you were 2 years old, we would sit on the floor for half an hour and I'd say, Finn can do hard things, while he was like learning how to put his shoes on. You can do that really easily now. And now the hard thing is packing a lunchbox, packing a bag, that kind of thing. And then guess what? There's going to be a new hard thing. And he goes, oh no, when do the hard things stop? Like never. We're always challenging and stretching ourselves and bearing ourselves. And, it's when you stop growing, you start shrinking. And then it's like, that's not what life's about. Life's about the growth.
Yep, it's important to go with the flow of the hard things, because that's what helps us evolve and grow.
Yeah. I have to also add, because I was thinking about it in the lead up to the conversation that we were going to have, because I've been teaching for so long, and I think about it when I'm working with younger teachers now and coaches and that kind of thing, is they've not experienced what the industry was like, when we started at the beginning, not at the beginning, when we started at the beginning of our careers,
right.
20 years ago. The students are very different. We're in a very different world. So much has changed. And when I first started out, every kid that I taught, not every kid, 90% of the kids that I taught were very athletic. They were very good at bailing themselves out. And, they had good survival instincts. And I would have a handful of kids that didn't know how to use their body, and they didn't know how to bail themselves out. When they'd fall off, they'd really hurt themselves, they'd land hard, they weren't very coordinated. And as a 20-year-old, they were my least favourite students, and I did not enjoy teaching them. Now, as, a 30-year-old and 30, older, seeing that this is the new normal, it's probably about 50 to 70% of the kids that come through, they don't know how to use their body, they don't know how to coordinate things, they don't know how to bail themselves out, they don't have good survival instincts. I actually have to teach them that, and it's a whole new skill set that I didn't have. And so I personally worked with a PT to help me better communicate how to use your body, because what you find, if you don't know how to communicate something so that people can understand it, that's when you end up with your high pressure, just do it, push them through it, make them do it, put the pressure on, you have to just figure it out. It's these kids aren't having experiences where they're learning it and they're able to figure it out with the experience. And so you can either get really frustrated or you can get the tools. And the tools were, I had to learn more about how the body moves functionally, so that I had exercises that I could give them in the saddle that would help them learn how to coordinate those parts of their body to be able to use them as well. And so, when I was first teaching, it was a lot more the kids just responded and could do it.
Yeah.
And now it's a lot more this is how you fold your hips. This is how you engage your diaphragm. This is how you find length in your leg.
Do you think it's because
your shoulder blades together?
Do you think it's because they're more sedentary and looking at screens? Is that what? Yeah,
I think so.
That's really hard, but I'm so glad that you're learning how to teach them this way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is the more sedentary lifestyle. I think also I have it front of mind with my son that I don't want him to have a sedentary lifestyle, but I also think the world's a lot less safe, or maybe we're more protective. because I don't
think
want
it's
him
both.
to go out and ride
Yeah.
a bike unsupervised.
Yeah.
I don't want, him to be put in situations like I wouldn't, let him do the things that I could do as a kid, but I won't do them anymore. Like I used to go out riding on the roads. The roads are just too dangerous now to ride on them. So it's like maybe the world has got too dangerous for them to be independent and learn these things. Maybe we've got too soft and clingy, trying to keep them alive. I don't know which one it is, but it's definitely part of the coaching program for me now is teaching kids how to use their body. Every now and then I'll have a kid that comes in and they just do it and I don't have to teach them. Like, you're amazing. I like this. This is so much easier. Or I'll have, a student as an adult that comes in, like the PT, I don't have to teach her how to use her body. Dancers, cheerleaders, like those kinds of people that have had to learn how to use their body. I'm like, so much easier. I don't have to explain every small movement in your body.
Yes.
But majority now, like I would go more to the 70% of riders need to be taught how to use their body than the 10% I would have had 20 years ago.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting to know and good to know for the future as I go out more and work with kids again later. Wow. And I do actually have one remote child that I work with, but the adults are there supervising and helping with the horse, of course. But I resisted, but then I understood that the mare was a gorgeous caretaker and they'd be right there. I'm like, okay, I will help. But that makes so much more sense. But he is very active though. He does like gymnastics and soccer and other things. So that was very helpful. But yeah, that makes sense. I'm so glad that you had a PT to help you explain it. That's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been really good. She has taught me some really, really handy hands-on techniques to get people into the right position and help them find it in their own body when we have our own limitations and restrictions in how our body wants to go. So many people don't know how to move their pelvis. It's like just frozen in place. And everything that we do in the saddle when we're using our seat is moving your pelvis. So just getting people to breathe and move their pelvis around, I can get a downward transition from that without them having to use their reins. And they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I've never experienced this before. I'm like, yeah, because your pelvis has been locked frozen in this forward tilt and you can't do anything with it. And, again, that's a product of our society. That pelvis being stuck in that forward tilt is our flight mechanism switched on. If they don't let go of their stress and breathe and learn how to move their pelvis, they don't let go of the tension. We see that in the horse. If we don't learn relaxation with our horses, the horse's pelvis gets frozen. And then we can't figure out why our horse won't work over the back. And it's because we don't breathe. And then that's also what we call a hot seat, right? It's like the horse that doesn't slow down is the seat that doesn't move. It doesn't call them back.
That's why the yoga move cat-cow is so valuable for that. It really helps. Yep.
Yeah, beautiful.
So if you could create a big billboard for riding instructors to see, what phrase would you want them to read?
I don't know if it's the phrase I'd want them to read, but our school motto is if you die, walk it off. It's probably a bit abrasive for people who aren't in that world, but, I put a lot of time and effort and work into the kids to begin with to make sure that they are safe around the horses. They know how to handle them safely. They know how to move around them. But horses are still horses. They're still going to bite. They're still going to kick. They're still going to run over top of you. They're still going to take off with you. They're still going to buck. And there comes a very difficult point of letting go of control and allowing somebody to experience that without you micromanaging everything. And that transition is very challenging. And I say to my kids, okay, you've got enough training. You've got enough nous about you. Put your horse brain on. Think about what you're doing. You can do this without me. And then if you die, walk it off. It's just a really, I don't know, it really lightens the mood.
Yep, totally get that. I guess you could say trust in your teaching ability and let go of control.
Yeah, and if, it all unravels and the inevitable happens, you get injured, we'll slow down on the other side.
Brilliant. Oh my goodness.
I think it's also helpful because I don't like my kids falling off, so they don't fall off really that often.
Right.
And so I control their environment a lot. And I think as a result, it creates a fear around falling off. And I fell off every single day I rode when I was a kid. And so, yes, it hurts a little bit, but it's not like this big thing that we create in our mind that we're going to really get hurt, especially if we're like on properly surfaced arenas and that kind of thing. So being able to make the falling off a little bit more lighthearted just helps them to have a little bit more confidence. It's going to be fine. You'll just have a little roll and we'll get back up and get back on.
That's really important. Yeah. To have that, it's not that big a deal feeling.
Yeah.
Yes. So is there anything that you want to share regarding your business?
So we do actually have a free webinar. I'll send the link through to you so that you can include it in the show notes because I can't actually remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I'll do. Yes, I would definitely add all of your links in the show notes for everyone. Yeah.
And so it is a webinar. There's no like actual horse training in it, but it's about building the willingness of the horse. I actually had this conversation with one of my students yesterday. She's like reading one of the dressage books and she's like, "What's submission?" I'm like, oh my God, this is such a loaded question because, it's really down to your perception with what submission is, because it can be this idea of power over where we're controlling the horse through aversive tools and forcing submission. But what we try to teach is congruence of like that internal state matches the external state. We're trying to get the horses to choose what we're asking them to do rather than force them. I had this half-hour conversation with her about what congruence is and what submission is, and like, if you were doing the dishes and you were lit up to do the dishes because you had some music on and you're going to finish it and have a snack, then you would be congruent with doing the dishes. But if you had to do dishes with the threat of your mum spanking you with a wooden spoon, then you'd do it, but you wouldn't be congruent with the action. So we had this like big discussion. And so that's a lot of what we teach with our online programs, is about developing congruent willingness. And that's a lot about, being able to pay attention to that tension building, the state of the nervous system. It's also why we teach liberty in our groundwork. You really know if the horse is choosing you, if they stay with you when you take the halter off. Especially if you don't have food or treats.
Yes.
And so being able to, I think there's such a rift in the horse industry of like, a horse that can choose and a horse that can say no is a dangerous horse. Whereas I see it the other way around, is that a horse that can't choose and a horse that can't make decisions and a horse that can't say no is a dangerous horse, because yes, you can push them to a certain point, but then they don't have capacity to emotionally negotiate tough things. And that's when you get the random explosions out of nowhere. And so understanding how to actually see that in the horse's body has been, King's gift to me, but then learning it further with the breath work and really recognizing it within my own body, being able to see it in the horses, being able to communicate it to others. I think it's such a valuable tool that I think a lot of experienced horse men and women know and don't know how to communicate to others, because that's your timing, right?
Yes.
So many people say you can't teach timing and you can't teach feel, which, it is hard, but if you understand what timing and feel is, which is the horses, I'm holding tension, I'm not ready, breathe.
Exactly.
I'm not holding tension, I am ready. If you can see that, it de-escalates all of the problems that you're going to have. It means that your horse is so much safer for those kids. It means you can pull them up before it becomes a problem. You're still going to have the accidents, but they're so much more preventable because you can see it. You can see it unfolding in front of you before it happens. So you can say, we're going to just take a moment. You're going to find relaxation in your horse again before we go over the next jump, because it's getting a little bit excited. There's too much tension building and now it's rushing that fence. And then, so yeah, that's what, like, we don't actually teach it all the way through to the jumping. That's like what our own online programs are and our school does. But it is those first steps of what is willingness and eager participation from the horse. What does that congruence look like and how do we find it? So I think it's like maybe about an hour webinar on that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's a free one as well.
Brilliant. Well, I will definitely add that to the show notes, and I'm excited for people to check it out. Katie, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, that was just brilliant, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, please, everyone listening, do create a review on whatever platform you're on. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to lead with kindness for yourself and for your horse. And may the horse be with you always.